Star Trek, I feel like even non-Trekkies were aware of Star Trek and that it had such a positive vision for what we could become as humanity. But I don't see anything that's really sort of had the same hopeful vision that's had the same cultural, like, been able to penetrate into mainstream society as much. I just wondering if you knew of something.
No, I thought the same thing, and I thought that the kids these days are at a disadvantage of not being able to be as inspired as we did, because we grew up with Star Trek, we grew up with that hope for the future, and I thought they were deprived of that. Until I was talking about the Artemis mission, human landing system, I was talking about SpaceX and Falcon 9 and reusability and us going back to the moon and settling in space. To a young person in their teens, and that person did say, "Oh yeah, he grew up watching a cartoon called Miles from Tomorrowland." Miles from Tomorrowland.
I've never heard of it.
I know that show.
Okay.
Exactly. My daughter used to watch it, and it is very educational. And I was like, "That's right. We watched the Jetsons."
Right, Jetsons.
And this generation's The Jetsons is an amazing show called Miles from Tomorrowland.
Miles from Tomorrowland.
And it'll take you everything from Yuri's Night to why Mars is red and why it's rust and how, and of course the little things like if they're going to an exoplanet, why it's called an exoplanet, and how certain moons or planets away from are tidally locked and what that means. And of course they'd have some adventures, and the boy usually runs off and gets himself into trouble, and the sister has to come and save the day, or the robot or something. And that was so fantastic, but we grew out of that phase. And so this young generation does have a lot of science fiction that they can enjoy. The new generation of Lost in Space is really inspiring, and I like it. And I was very surprised to see this young man say his dream was to go out into the solar system and see that scene in some silly, stupid movie, the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Okay.
Where he said, I want to see people from this planet and that planet and having big noses and big ears and everything, all sitting at the same bar, all united as one. And I'm like, that's a very Star Trek thing to say.
Sure.
But he got that inspiration from Guardians of the Galaxy. But it was hard for me to accept the fact that no, Star Trek is the real inspiration. But I think the young generation is going to be fine because there's plenty out there to inspire them, especially the real deal, not just science fiction.
I know. And it's funny, whenever you were talking about that, if you took out the all together as one, I was thinking about Star Wars, the very first episode they produced where you had the bar.
That's what I was thinking as well. And when I started researching it, those bar scenes are an homage to what inspired those producers, directors, and writers.
Oh, that's pretty neat.
Yeah, like an Easter egg type thing, yeah.
Well, I think it's probably silly of me to ask you, did you know that we're going to the moon? Though you'd be probably sad to learn how many people say no, they had no clue. But when did you find out that we were really seriously going back to the moon this time?
I've been following in the industry, forever. I mean, it's we thought we were going to go back to the moon with the Ares missions. We knew, so I'm that much of a nerd, So, when the shuttle retired, what's the next step? Are we going to go to the ARM mission? We're going to go to an asteroid, and we're going to bring back an asteroid to learn to orbit, and then we're like, we're just going to bring a boulder of an asteroid. Well, how's that not going to tear your spacecraft apart?
Sure.
There's huge engineering challenges. I really wanted ARM to be a reality.
Oh, really? Okay.
I was a big fan of the asteroid redirect mission.
Wow. Okay.
I'm a fan of asteroids. For me, it's I want to see humans actually go to the next frontier, and that next frontier is not just the moon again, but actually settling the moon and doing science on the moon and having bases on the moon, exploring lava tubes on the moon, doing real exploration. And I'd like us to explore the asteroids. I'd like us to go back to Mars. And so there's no this or that. I don't believe in moon or Mars. So when did I find out? I found out as soon as it was announced because I've been a fan of it.
So you're pretty excited about us going back to the moon?
Absolutely. Not just humanity going back to the moon. I mean, we're going to actually look at Jessica Meir right here. That's my vote for who's going to be the first woman to walk on the moon. I keep telling people, in 1,000 years, no one's going to know the name Joe Biden or Donald Trump or Bill Clinton, just like nobody these days knows the name Taft or Woodrow Wilson, and that's only less than 100 years old. But everyone is going to know the name Neil Armstrong.
That's true.
It's true. And in my opinion, also everyone will know the name Jessica Meir, Jessica Watkins, that generation of the next lunar explorers that we didn't grow up with, but our new generation will know and see. Like all of these TVs you see in every restaurant, bar, TV, home, they're going to have that iconic footage in 4K of Jessica Meir or Jessica Watkins or Anne McClain, walking on the moon, and it's going to spark a huge inspirational journey that's really going to propel society to go back, not only to re-explore space, but to take us to Mars.
Now, each time we send somebody on a mission, we make a mission patch, and it's like a big deal. It's been a big deal ever since we started human spaceflight in America. Do you think this is a decade where we replace the mission patch with the boarding pass?
I would love for that to happen, because that means it's a norm. That means it's normal. And I think we are that 2 years away from anyone who can write a check going on that 2-week mission to the moon. But that comes with its own challenges. I mean, we've only sent superhumans to space since 1961, when Yuri Gagarin went to space, April 12, 1961. For the last 63 years, we've only sent the healthiest people on the planet to space, 3 people at a time.
Sure.
Superhumans.
Well, 7 with shuttle.
With Soyuz and Mercury, Gemini.
And then you got 4 with the.
However, you can monitor every person, but if you go on an airplane that carries hundreds of people, no one knows your medical history.
That's right.
And we are a few years away from doing that, being able to do that in space. And there is a gap between space medicine and our knowledge with people who might have high blood pressure, ischemia, any kind of these diseases on Earth. How do we treat those in space? We have no data on that. So there is a lot we got to catch up with. And that's an opportunity for everybody watching there. If they're in a field that's not in space, but might be in medicine or nursing or physiology or exercise, that you're going to be more important than the engineer just a few years from now, as we send these hundreds of people with a boarding pass on a 2-week mission to the moon.
Yeah, it might be like global entry, where you have to go through like some type of medical screening every so often just to be able to buy a ticket, type of thing.
Probably like pilots again.
Yeah,
for a pilot, you just be able to make sure you stay alive during the flight. So if you're just want to make sure you're not going to die of natural causes on the way to the moon, but we still don't know how zero gravity affects a lot of the diseases that we take for granted over here.
And then, the high G load during takeoff and landing and that type of thing. And,
absolutely.
And then also maybe a more carbon dioxide enriched air that maybe hasn't been quite as filtered as you're here used to on Earth.
That's also an engineering challenge. We need better CO2 scrubbers. We need better technology. That's a business opportunity for every founder over there saying, I want to start a business. Well, there's a business idea for you right there that's going to be worth millions.
And now, in 200 years, if you look at the future of humanity, what does it look like to you?
I wanted my future of humanity is what I thought future of humanity was going to be like in the 90s, where thousands and tens of thousands of people are living and working in space. And I still truly believe that vision of millions of people living and working in space is the future. Where it just has been delayed, and I think it's going to pick back up, and that I want to see that vision become a reality. So millions of people living and working in space is also my passion and vision, and that's why I'm working so hard to realize it, not just for myself, but for humanity.
So you think in 200 years there'll be like museums on the moon and Earth, on the moon and Mars, where they're like, hey, this is what it's like on Earth. Where they like people, you do want to experience what life is like, and they have like
I mean, all of this that you see around you in this museum is 50 years old.
Right.
So in 200 years, I mean, I expect, yes, for people to say, just like we look at the steam engine and say, this is what got us to, to explore the frontier of the West, we're going to say, hey, look, these are the this was an artifact that led us to explore the moon or Mars, with this archaic landing system from 200 years ago. So I'm looking forward to that day.
The Model T.
When the Model T of rockets, But no, I think just in every other industry, technology has continued, technology has evolved. Our issue with space is when it's government funded and a program is canceled. That's never happened in the private market. In the private market, when a company dies, another 5 or 6 companies come to take their place.
Sure.
That's why all these industries, whether it's automotive or airlines or everything, when they became privatized, and there's a business model for it, there's so many people to fill that gap because everyone is going to want to go after that profit. So now that it's becoming private and commercialized, we're going to see a lot more development. We're going to see a lot more business case, and let the market decide if it's going to, survive or fail. But give it a chance, and let's find out if the market exists or not.
Now, I know it's kind of silly to ask if you would take a trip to space, considering you're taking private astronaut training. So a better question for you would be, when do you think you'll get to take a trip to space?
Yesterday.
Yesterday.
I would say within the next 5 years, if I don't get on a flight, I will make sure to build the business that becomes so valuable that I will be able to exit and purchase that flight, just like Jared Isaacman has done, just like Chris Boshuizen has done, and just like Dennis Tito has done, and a lot of these other private, Anousheh Ansari, a lot of these other private people. So if I can't be the qualified astronaut, you better be sure I'm going to be that top business person who's going to be worth the ability to actually pay my ticket for space. So I believe in redundancy that way as well, not just through my qualifications, but I'm going to make it happen one way or another.
And the amazing thing about those business people you mentioned is the nature of their business wasn't some phenomenal world-changing thing. I mean, Dennis Tito, low-cost, funds. What do you call it? Like index funds, I guess, and then
investments. Yeah.
And then you had Ansari, which was
telecommunications, voice over IP,
and then Jared Isaacman is payment systems. So I mean,
fintech,
those are all kind of companies that conceivably anybody that was motivated to do could do. It's not like you needed to be like Thomas Edison or something.
Hey, I remember when Chris Boshuizen was actually sitting at the Space Generation Advisory Council checking people's ID badges and stamping them, allowing them to go through. And that volunteering is what got him to the next level. He created a CubeSat called PhoneSat. That turned into another PhoneSat mission, and then they got the idea, him and his partners, Will Marshall, to actually have a swarm of those. And that was like way out there thinking. Everyone thought it was stupid, to say have a swarm of these phone-sized satellites called CubeSats that can look down at the Earth at all times. And that turned into Planet Labs.
Wow.
And then when that IPO'd, he managed to pay his way to a ticket to go to space with William Shatner, Captain Kirk himself, going all the way full circle back to Star Trek.
That's funny. Well, Mac, that's pretty much all the standard questions I had for you. Is there anything that you want to add, or any questions you had for me?
You know what? Anyone who can see this and not be inspired, I truly believe that every tech fan, every aviation fan, every geek or programmer is also a space fan. They just don't know it yet. So someone like me who watches your podcast and say, wow, I'm so inspired, that's what I know, that they're there, it's in them. You just, once they discover your work or your interviews or your podcast, you discover this amazing industry, we got them. So I'm not worried about the future because it's not a matter of funding from the government. It's going to be a market that's going to either sink or swim. and I'll be fine if it sinks. At least we gave it a shot. So yeah, if this is your dream, yeah, go after it. Go after it. Work as hard as you can. You're going to fail for years and decades, but everyone I know who's actually gone to space, just continued and persevered, and you hear that all the time because it's true.
Well, Mac, thank you so much.
Absolutely, thank you.
It's great getting to talk to you.
You bet. Thank you.
Awesome. This may have been the